Hello, my name is Ami Adini. I am an environmental professional, and I'm hereby going to introduce to you a new series on the subject of environmental site assessments as they are mandated by the Small Business Administration, which is in the back of quite a few real estate transactions. I think you will find them interesting. Thank you very much. Let's go. Hello, this is our number 2 video on the subject of SBA loans as they are conditioned with environmental due diligence or environmental site assessments. And our number 1 video, you can find it at www.amiadini.com. I really encourage you to watch it. Although every video, we try to make it independent on its own merits. But if you watch all of them, starting from one, it will even enhance your understanding much better. The SBA has its loan program. It's called the 504 loan program, which is for financing for major fixed assets. And the loan is being administered through certified development companies, which are basically an extended arm, if you wish, of the SBA. And they then get connected. I'm not familiar with the details. They are connected with the lenders. And eventually the loan, which is backed up by the SBA, comes to the borrower through this lender. And all of these loan programs by the SBA have certain conditions which relate to the environmental due diligence. And SBA has this standard operating procedure for the loan program. It's called SOP 50-10-6. The 6 means that right now there is a 6th edition or 6th revision of this program. This is the most recent one. And it establishes the participation requirements for all the lenders in all the SBA loan programs. The Chapter 6 of SOP 50 has in it Subchapter E, which is the environmental policies and procedures. Again, this is part and parcel from the SBA SOP. You cannot detach it, you cannot break it apart. It is there. It is an inherent part of the operating procedure. And it deals with environmental policies, the procedure, and it applies to all SBA lenders, no exceptions. And this chapter deals with environmental contamination risks. And in our previous presentation, we detailed all these risks. And here I repeat them in short to you. I expanded upon them in the previous presentation with a lot of pictures and images. But basically, there are 4 risks that the SBA is looking at when they are for environmental related liabilities, that they are looking into it when they are looking to make a loan. Risk number 1, the cost of remediation could impair the borrower's ability to repay the loan or continue to operate the business. Number B, the value of the property could be diminished. So then the SBA, if they want to foreclose, they will now have a property which is worth half or quarter or maybe 10% of what it used to be worth as a clean property. And since they gave the loan, if the lender loaned onto the property without taking into consideration the contamination, guess what? Now they have a property with a diminished value. Number C risk or concern is that if the SBA or the lender foreclose on a contaminated property, now they own it. So they gave a loan of $1 million, and now they own a $10 million liability. And the government will go, and some of them are deep pocket. I mentioned in the previous presentation, Bank of America, Wells Fargo take, whatever, one of those big banks now, and even a smaller bank, and now they are liable. I mean, they are in deep pocket. The government would love to go after them. And because now they become the owner, and even third parties would love to go after them. So it's a big exposure if they foreclose on a contaminated property. So they big risk. The fourth or number D risk that if the government is moving it, let's say the SBA lender did not foreclose, they're sitting by the wayside, waiting for the property to be cleaned up, and then the government moved in and they cleaned it up, they will file a lien on the property, and the lien will take precedence onto the SBA lien. Now the government will be number one. So these are the risks that are involved in contaminated properties. So what the SBA requires is, okay, guys, before you make loans on properties, on commercial properties, do environmental investigations. Don't go there blindfolded. Do environmental investigation. Otherwise, you will have to face this fighter here, all right? So make sure so there we go. And the SBA requires an environmental investigation of all commercial property upon which security interest, such as mortgage, deed of trust, or leasehold deed of trust, is offered as a security for a loan or debenture. I'm not sure what debenture is. Maybe you guys can help me. But anyway, as a loan. The type and depth of an environmental investigation to be performed varies with the risk of the contamination. So they want to know if it is contaminated, if there is any concerns about contamination, and if there are concerns, they want to know if it is contaminated. And if it is contaminated, they want to know to what degree it is contaminated. That's environmental investigations. And once we have done the investigation, we need to submit the environmental investigation report. So yours truly, right now that I'm reaching to you and telling you about all of this, I am what is considered environmental professional, and there are others like me. And we do these reports, and we are environmental professionals, and we have to have certain qualifications, and my qualifications, they go back a long time. So yes, we talked about environmental professionals. So all these investigations have to be performed, SBA says they have to be performed by environmental professional as defined by the EPA, by California, by United States EPA. And there is a very definite definition for who or what is an environmental professional. And again, I'm happy to tell you that I am an environmental professional by the definitions of the EPA. And I'm an environmental professional because I've done it, number one, since 1988. I've done lots of thousands of phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments. I graduated in 1964 with a degree in mechanical engineering and additional credits in nuclear and chemical engineering, and spent the next 20 years in a nuclear facility and in chemical facilities. So I know nuclear, I know chemical. Became a general engineering contractor with a specialty in hazardous substance removal. So I have a certificate to remove hazardous substances, and I've done a lot of these projects. Here is a recent one in Silver Lake, city of Los Angeles, Silver Lake community, where it was a pesticide facility. We removed about over 1,000 cubic yards of pesticide contaminated soil. You see here all the concrete debris, and they are impregnated with pesticides. And we removed here several 100 tons of concrete debris with pesticides. And so that kind of qualifies us. And to be an environmental professional, I was also close to 20 years environmental assessor with the California EPA. And so this as far as the qualifications. And then the environmental investigation steps, what they include, they have several steps. And that's important to know because when we go, and again, the SBA have their recipe, they have their procedure, how they want the lender to do these environmental investigations. And of course, the lender is in the process, in the subject, in the business of lending. They don't do this investigation, so they come to us to help them. But here is the series of requirements of the steps for environmental investigations. First off, the SBA tells the lenders, find the NAICS code, N-A-I-C-S, NAICS code. What is a NAICS? NAICS is short for North American Industry Classification System. It's a classification system that classifies all businesses in accordance with the type of business. They give them a number, so a code number. So the SBA is telling the lender, so for check the NA codes, go through the NA codes for all properties that you are going to lend on, identify the property, identify what it does, and then go through the NAICS and find what codes pertain to the type of business that is on the property, the current business, and known and prior uses. Find what kind of businesses exist now and existed before on this property, and find what kind of a code pertain to this kind of business. That's step number A. And here is just a demonstration of some of these codes. For example, 322 is a paper manufacturing. So number 322, I'm sorry, paper manufacturing. 325, chemical manufacturing. Let me see, 444, gasoline stations. 337, furniture. So every type of business has a code, and you have to find the code number. That's a step number A by the SBA procedure. And more codes, marinas, laundry and dry cleaning. They have their own code. Find what is the code. And by the way, and it says here, there is an asterisk, a phase 1 should always be obtained if the business sells, supplies, or dispenses fuel, gasoline, heating oil, even if the NAICS code for the business is not identified on this list, etc. So you run into a business that sells gasoline or dispenses, you know you have to do a phase 1. Forget about it. You have to do a phase 1, okay? Regardless if it is on this list or not. And so you have to identify those codes. And so it says for NAICS code, all property except a unit, etc., 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 you have to find the NAICS code. And then they say, if there is such a code matched to environmentally sensitive industry, which is identified in Appendix 6. So they give you an Appendix 6, what are the environmentally sensitive industry? And they describe them, and I'll show it to you in a moment. And if there is any code there that matches a sensitive industry, you have to do an environmental investigation that will start with a phase 1, regardless of the amount of the loan, even if it is $1. Well, that are not dollar loan, but whatever is the amount of the loan, okay? So you have to do a phase 1 if it falls into a code which is in Appendix 6. So what is Appendix 6? Okay, so I did not put it here, but there is an Appendix 6, and if the business falls into it, you have to do a phase 1. So, and then you have to look into the phase 1 results. Section E under these investigation steps, look into the phase 1 results. If the environmental professional, I am a professional, conducting the phase 1 ESA, environmental site assessment, conclude that no further investigation is warranted, the SBA lender must submit the results of the investigation to SBA with recommendations and seek their concurrence. So I have here a tremendous responsibility, right? If I tell you as a lender, if you are a lender or involved in the loan, if I tell you that there is no further investigation, in all likelihood, the SBA will concur. And it says, if the environmental professional conducting the phase 1 concludes that further investigation is warranted, typically a phase 2, and the SBA lender still wants to make the loan, the SBA lender must proceed as recommended by the environmental professional. Now look into what kind of heavy, serious, fiduciary responsibility it puts on me as an environmental professional. If I recommend a phase 2, if I say phase 2 is needed, the lender must proceed. And similarly, if I say it's not needed, then they don't proceed. So that's pretty hefty liability and responsibility on my end as a professional environmental consultant, environmental professional to incur. So in the alternative, submit the results of the environmental investigation of the SBA with recommendation and seek SBA concurrence. In general, SBA will require compliance with all of an environmental professional recommendation, because SBA usually don't employ their own professionals. And if they employ professionals, these are professionals, even if they employ these professionals are not doing the investigations. I am the one in the field. I am the one who is doing all the research. I am the one who is inspecting the property. So even if the SBA lender has an environmental department, it's hard for them to refute what I'm saying, all right? So again, it's a pretty heavy, as I said, hefty responsibility. And so in general, SBA will require compliance with all of an environmental professional recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. So this is as far as the phase 1 results. Now, so here is some of the tools. If we recommend the phase 2, you see here a picture of some of the tools that we use in a phase 2. Here on the upper left side, you see a big machine drilling down to groundwater, taking groundwater samples. On the upper middle, you see another machine where we drill inside the industrial property, going down 40 feet to groundwater to take samples, taking soil samples on the way. Here on the upper hand side, you see my associate taking soil vapor samples. He's sucking vapor from the soil and taking vapor samples from the soil. Bottom left, you see here these are canisters. We take indoor air samples. Middle bottom, we look for buried objects, usually buried tanks in the ground with these electromagnetic devices. And bottom right, we take soil samples by hand. So this is how we do the phase 2. It's actual intrusive sampling, unlike phase 1, which is only research and looking, and phase 2 is intrusive sampling. And so in the phase, once we have done the phase 2, then we have to submit the phase 2 results. If the environmental professional conducting, so again, we get to the phase 2 from the phase 1. So phase 1 could say nothing is needed, everything is clear, that's fine. Everybody is happy. We just had a happy client today. And we did okay, everything is good. And but if we say to do the phase 2, then we do a phase 2, then we have to submit the phase 2 results. If the phase 2 ESA, environmental site assessment, concludes that no further investigation is warranted, the SBA lender must submit the results of the investigation to SBA with recommendations and seek again SBA concurrence. And usually they look into it, and usually here we see the happy lender, they will finance the transaction. F, SBA result, F, phase 2 ESA results. If the phase 2 ESA, environmental site assessment, reveals contamination, we say, okay, there is contamination, and the SBA lender still wishes to make the loan, the SBA lender must ensure that the environmental professional has documented whether the contamination quantities exceed the reportable or actionable, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, if we say there is contamination. Now they need to go into some extra steps and to convince the SBA to still make the loan. And I don't want to get too much into it, but even with if we say the property is contaminated, there is still a way out, because not every contamination is bad, is serious case. And we have we have about these tables, these are regulatory tables with all kinds of numbers, okay? And they tell us, okay, there is contamination, but if the contamination is below this number, you are okay. We are not concerned about it. So you could have a contaminated property. Not every contaminated property is bad. It could be contaminated, but if the numbers are good, and just today I had another case like this where I did a phase 2, and the numbers came and the numbers were good. So they are going to finance, SBA is going to finance this loan. So property could be contaminated, but it's not the end of the day. Now, if the phase 2 reveals contamination and the SBA lender still wishes to make the loan, he has to determine if remediation is necessary. Let's say, for example, the numbers are such that we know that regulatory agencies, they will not let it go this way. They will require some action. And then we need to tell the SBA lender if remediation will be necessary. Remediation is expensive. You can see the picture here. Remediation can go into the millions, all right? So if we determine that the remediation is necessary, it kills the deal, okay? There will be no deal, whatever, all right? But not every contamination, even if it goes to regulatory agency, and even if it exceeds the numbers that I just showed you, not every contamination requires remediation. So there is a way to go, okay? And so if the phase 2 reveals contamination, etc., and we still want to make the loan, we need to give an estimate of any remediation cost. So again, then again, we as professionals, we can come and say, well, okay, yes, they need remediation, but this is an easy case. Probably if it's $100,000, they would clean it up, and the loan that is expected here is $10 million. All right, well, $100,000 cost is far from $1 million, right? So there is a hope for the loan, okay? So we need to estimate remediation cost. And also, we need, if they still want to make the loan, we need to estimate the projected completion date of the remediation. Time is money. Here we say time is money. So not only the cost, we say, okay, will this remediation take 1 month, 1 year, 10 years? We need to give all these numbers to the SBA. And well, Mr. Buffett tells us risks come from not knowing what you are doing. So we are phase 1 and phase 2. We are trying to show you, number 1, that we know what we are doing. And number 2, we want to bring you to a condition where you know what you are doing, all right? And of course, with our warranty and with our professional warranty behind it, and professionalism. And the philosopher here on the left, the teacher philosopher on the left, this is a painting from 1584, 1842, the artist lived, so that's a long time ago. Yeah, so we say, what you know, really what you know cannot hurt you. When you know something really good, it will never hurt you. That's a very strong philosophical concept. So thank you very much for attending this installment. The first installment is on the website. This is the second installment, and coming next will be the third installment, which will talk about property contamination and remediation. See you there. Thank you very much.